Okay, awesome. Okay, greetings everyone, and welcome to this week's Transformation Thursday. This evening, I am very happy to introduce our speaker, Miss Laurelle of the Faerie Den in New York City. Okay, and this evening we will explore healing with nature's elements. Okay, feel free to take it away while I figure out this stuff that's going on in the background.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Maybe you can figure out that live stream. Hi, I'm Laurelle, and I'm so excited to be here tonight to speak to you. I am author of the #1 hot new release, Connecting with Crystals, Crystal Wisdom and Stone Healing for Body, Mind, and Spirit. It's available at bookstores everywhere, but also on my website, on Amazon, etc. If you are interested particularly in crystals or my philosophies in regards to crystals as well. But I've also been actively working with nature and nature's medicine essentially all my life, but actively since my 20s. I grew up with a father who was an avid gardener and bird watcher, and I really got to, sorry, got that. I really got to be immersed in nature in a way that many people weren't. He really taught me about plants and growing them, and just appreciating nature, which is something that maybe I wasn't thinking I was especially inclined to, but I realize over my life, I've definitely been. I'm also a Virgo, if that means anything to any of you. So I have always been very focused on healing and health and wellness. And so it all just sort of came together over time. I also grew up dancing, moving my body, feeling the rhythms of the earth within me. I started eating organic foods. I mean, I sort of had been with my father doing so much gardening. We ate a lot of organic and heirloom vegetables when I was growing up. And that just sort of transferred to my adult life, where I ate organic before it was popular. And I still wonder if it even really is, but I just wanted less pesticides in my food. I wanted to know that I was getting more of the mineral content from the foods. And when you have more natural farming practices, you get more minerals, more vitamins in your food. I was dancing professionally. I started singing professionally. I was really feeling the vibrations in my own body. And I was fascinated by astrology. I had several astrologer friends who would talk to me about it all. And I was just fascinated with the world at large and my place within it, and was really asking the big questions from an early age, and looking for ways to understand why we're here and what my place is in the world. So I did notice a lot of just wanting to be in the flow of things. And when I was in sort of an energetic flow with things, then things in my life would just sort of line up. And when I would sort of get off kilter, frustrated, angry, I just noticed that my life didn't flow quite as well, and I had to get back in the flow. That's what I would call it. I'm not in the flow. I've got to get in the flow. And that was just an intuitive way of working with the energies of life and living. And then I eventually started studying in depth about crystals and essential oils, a little more about plants, but a lot more about meditation and energy healing, movement practices like Qigong and Tai Chi, exploring sound and vibration just in my own life for my own healing, my own health and wellness, and just sort of natural living. And so what I learned from all of this process growing up essentially is we learn from nature, watching nature, being in nature, experiencing nature, and that the earth is simply a physical manifestation of the divine frequencies. So to me, we have divine above and divine below, and honestly, divine everywhere in a sense. we, well, this will come in a minute, but we are electromagnetic beings interacting with everything. And so it's sort of a as above, so below kind of philosophy, which is hermetic. Or as Tesla said, if you want to know the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And everything is energy, everything is frequency and vibration. And so when we keep positive energies flowing in, when we, and of course, everybody's going to have negative feelings and emotions and thoughts from time to time, but it's really about coming to some sort of balance with letting these more neutral or higher vibrational frequencies into our own energy field. And when we interact with nature, we're interacting with that energy frequency that that bit of nature holds for us. So for instance, the energy frequency vibration that emanates from this pyrite in snow quartz is going to be very different than the energy frequency and vibration that you get with something like a green calcite. And it's almost something that you can see when you really learn how to see in this way, I suppose, that the color, the way the light refracts on or through a stone, all of this is part of the energy and frequency and vibration of the stone. And so when we introduce lower vibrational things into our energy field, it will often bring up lower thoughts or more negative thoughts or feelings, and it eventually leads to dis-ease. So that's why we want to try to manage the energy frequencies that we are interacting with. Of course, we're always going to have things that we have no control over. There is no control as far as I'm concerned. It's just how we interact and what we do to keep ourselves in a state of homeostasis and balance, which is homeostasis is sustained balance. Finding ways to keep us in that place more often so that when those more challenging things come up, we can interact with them in a new and different way. So these gifts from the divine in the form of crystals and plants and flowers, these are all higher vibrational frequencies. So a lot of people are like, oh, you wanted to get grounded, so you got a rock. Well, a lot of crystals actually expand our energy field and can almost seem ungrounding at times, while others, like some that are underneath me right now, oh, here's one, like this smoky quartz, do help to connect our energy field to the Earth's energy field so we can dump excess energy and really feel that connection with the Earth and how she holds and nurtures and supports us. And lastly, just looking into nature or communing with nature, being in nature. These are all ways to bring us into peace and silence within. It's really about bringing us back to the parasympathetic body, which is the state of rest and relaxation, as opposed to the sympathetic body, which is energy body, which is fight or flight. And so these are basic things that are understood and known in physical medicine, and like, you know, what an MD might tell you as well. But it's all about coming into that parasympathetic, that centered, still, quiet, peaceful place inside. We're all striving for some sort of inner peace in our lives. And this is also very helpful for health and healing. So holding crystals, meditating with crystals, or plants, or hugging trees. Hugging trees is one of the best. Just being present in nature, watching. Forest bathing is a thing these days where people just go into the forest, and they have huge benefits physically. They help with stress, anxiety, depression, but they also can do things like lower blood pressure or just help us to come back into body, essentially. So just a couple of principles. The earth below us is magnetic or feminine, And that would be considered the earth element. Fire above us in the form of the sun is electric, and we are electromagnetic beings drawing energy from both the sun and from the earth to bring us to our most balanced state. We're also in a toroidal field, which is an energy field, right? So this is newer information that's been coming through in the past 10 years or so. But just like a tree has a trunk that goes straight up and then branches that go out and then roots that pick up at the bottom and come back up, this is the shape of the toroidal field. It goes right up straight through our midline of our body and comes out the top of our crown and around and back down under us and right up into our root to come back up the center line again. So that's the toroidal field, but this is a three-dimensional energy field all around us, and it's moving in all sorts of different directions. But what we want to do is be as centered as we can within that toroidal field, that energy field, which is known as the aura by many. And we are made up of all energy is made up of tiny little tetrahedrons, which are three-sided triangles. It's a three-sided triangle shape in 3D. All energy is essentially starting to be understood to be based in that. And from that come what are known as the Platonic solids, or I actually like to call them nature solids, because Plato got them from the African priests actually in Egypt and brought them back. And we call them Platonic solids, but it's a much more ancient wisdom. And those 5 shapes include the cube or the hexahedron, the dodecahedron, which many people think is the actual shape of the earth, the icosahedron, which is the most prevalent shape in water. But all of those still revert back down to the tetrahedron, which is the fire element, and spirit and matter is fire. And then the mind is air. Ether is spirit or plasma. And so when we are affecting these energy particulates in our body, it really can shift everything. Our mind, the way we think about things, is connected to our spiritual alignment. Our emotions are connected to the way we think about things. And our body is affected by what our emotions and our mind and our spirit are involved in. So we all have a path that we walk down. There's some, the way I look at it is there's some way that we all need to grow and shift and change in this world. And we have experiences to bring that in. But when we're ready to really make a big change, and right now we are being astrologically supported to have an energetic frequency shift like nothing we've ever known in this in this lifetime, at least, or in this age, I would say. We are being supported to shift into a whole new frequency of being. And so when we shift our mindset, we're affecting everything in our body, physical and non-physical. And so I like to explain it this way. When you know something in your bones, then you actually emit that frequency out. And if you have a core belief that you decide was maybe misaligned or misguided, and you shift that core belief, it can change everything in your life because you're shifting the frequency that you are sending out. Our bones are piezoelectric, which means with pressure and heat, well, with pressure, they create an electrical pulse. And bones are also not solid. Many people think of bones as being solid, but they've got tiny little spaces in them. And in classical Chinese medicine, they really see the spirit in the space in the bones, or consciousness, the Shin. And so when we shift the way we think or our consciousness around something, it actually really does get broadcast out from the bones. So I'm sure most people who showed up didn't expect me to talk about energy when we're talking about the natural world. But to me, the natural world is made up of energy. And so that's where we've got to start. And understand that when we shift our vibrations, shift our frequencies, we can shift dis-ease in our body. We can shift emotional situations that we're going through. We can shift the way we think about things, which affects how we feel. And we can come to a greater spiritual alignment with the divine frequencies. So let's get down to the tools that nature has offered us. And I'll stop here just for a second in case there's a question from anyone. Vina. Or I can keep going.
I'm sorry, I just have this thing with the mute button. Like sometimes it's like the mute button disappears on me. But
you're like, where did it go?
yes, all the time, all the time. I am okay so far. I'm just trying to set up the Instagram right now. But you said there's a new word for the aura. Is that what you were saying?
Oh, I wasn't saying it's a new word. It's just there's a new understanding around the actual, what we would call the science of it, which is in regards to we are electromagnetic beings. And now we understand that this toroidal field, this torus field, which is also sort of like the shape of the apple core up the center and the expression of the apple. I'm drawing, sorry, it's drawing too big. Up and around and down. It's a little bit oblong. Some people call it a donut shape. I don't really like that one, but it's that energy that we now understand is around our physical bodies and around everything, trees, apples, crystals, even plastics have this toroidal energy field going up through the center and around. And there's been some really interesting scientific experiments that have looked into that and been proving that everything has this toroidal field and everything is at its essence in the shape of a tetrahedron, which are the little triangles.
That is very interesting. And forest bathing, that's different from grounding?
Well, it's somewhat one and the same. If you go out to the park and take your shoe or the backyard, take your shoes off and your socks off and stand on the earth or lie on the earth, you are working with the with your own electromagnetic frequencies and the magnetic frequencies of the earth as well to ground you and balance you and bring you back to a state of homeostasis, which again is sustained balance, which is what we want for our body. We want our body to, you know, everything to be, every organ and other thing to be in balance, but also when it's in balance, then it's in balance with everything else in the body. So we may have a healing crisis come up and one thing activates another thing, activates another thing. And the whole, that's because everything gets affected when something is off energetically in the body. And so it's knowing some of, obviously I'm not going to have time to go into more science around it. And honestly, also that's not my strength. I know enough science, thanks Dad, to have some understanding of all this. But my understanding is more about the spiritual application of it all. When I read something about science, I'm always looking for the metaphysical or higher understandings of what that is, which is also what really interests me about crystals. You know, crystals have minerals within them, and many of the minerals in crystals are the same minerals that are within our own bodies. And when we work with a crystal, for instance, this pyrite in quartz that I held up earlier, pyrite is an iron and quartz is a silicate. And so when I work with this stone, I'm working with iron and silicate. So what do we know about iron? Well, one, we know iron's very heavy, right? So it's going to be somewhat grounding. Iron is also very protective. It's very good for the blood, really getting the blood moving in the body, which is going to bring more vitality and energy. And we also know it can be strengthening, especially for things like, you know, when I think about what does strengthening mean metaphysically, and I'm taking the color into account because it has something to do with it, then we are talking about the solar plexus in a sense. And when I hold the crystals at this point, when I first started, I didn't really feel the energies of the stones, or at least I thought I didn't, but I didn't feel it the way other people were describing it to me. And so when I hold the stone now, though, I can really sense how the energy is flowing through my body. And I feel pyrite as an energy that comes straight from the sun. It holds that solar energy and pours straight down through the core midline of my body, but like a really thick energy that, thick is the wrong word, wide energy that moves through my body right into my solar plexus and right down into my root and below. So it's very grounding, but activating for the solar plexus as well. And so, so we think literally, oh, well, iron is strengthening and moving for the blood, but how does that affect the physical body? And then we can start to get into the metaphysical aspects of the physical properties.
Wow, this is also heavy, but it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Well, this is why I teach, I guess. I have a lot of information on all of this, and I for those of you who are interested, I teach crystal classes, I teach meditation and astrology, qigong. All of this you can find on my website, or one of my two websites, 5 Sense Healing or the Faerie Den. And I do healing therapies with this, and I also teach about it, and I sell the tools because it's all just so interesting to me. But crystals really affect us on the constitutional level. That's really at our very core. And this is something that I came to understand through taking classical Chinese stone medicine, and how that is so related to acupuncture or acupressure through their own study. This is what they came to understand and has been passed down. And it makes sense because these minerals are within us. And so you may think, well, how does holding a mineral come into my body? But again, I don't want to go into all the science around that. But essentially, when we bring a crystal into our energy field by holding it, there's an immediate exchange of electrons, and we're affecting our entire energy field just to bring a crystal in. It's true for other things as well, obviously, but there's a little more of a charge with it, so to speak, with the crystal because of how much energy these give off. But this is also, when we have a pet come into our energy field and we start to pet the animal, it shifts our energy. And that's what happens with the crystals as well. It's just a little more subtle and more difficult to understand. But all of the ancients understood and appreciated the effects of the natural world. They understood and appreciated how powerful crystals were for shifting people's lives. They understood that taking in the plants, it's vitamins, it's minerals, it's energy from the sun, because plants use the sun for growth. And so it's like we're eating the sun to work with the plants. Essential oils come from those plants. Essential oils are essentially what I call the pharmaceuticals of nature. And I'm actually getting that from one of my teachers, David Crow, who was an acupuncturist and Chinese herbalist for over 20 years in practice, and then started an essential oil company called Floricopia. And I studied with him because I really appreciated his principles on the production of essential oils, making sure it's organic or wild harvested plant matter, so that there's less chemicals on them, doing a slow process to extract the oils, doing it as naturally as possible. And I just appreciated who he was. So he calls them nature's pharmaceuticals, and I concur, because they're so concentrated. The oils is sort of like the lifeblood of the plant. It's very, very concentrated energy and information. And when we put an oil on our skin, it seeps in and goes into our bloodstream and circulates throughout the body within a minute. So there's definite physical and emotional attributes to using essential oils. When we smell essential oils or flowers or plants that have a nice scent to them. Scent bypasses our thinking brain and goes directly into our emotional center. And it's very healing for the emotions and the spirit. And crystals can do a similar thing when we bring it in. They just help to shift our whole frequency and bring us closer to a state of homeostasis, just through the energy transference that's happening. You don't have to have the crystal like on your body against your skin in order for it to be working with you, but you can do that as well. And then, of course, sound. I've been a singer and musician much of my life, and I love singing. I love feeling the vibration and the emotion move through my body. But healing sound, like chimes and bowls and bells, this is all very sacred and has been used for a long time, because sound is essentially directly from vibration and has a frequency to it that can really bring us back into homeostasis. I've studied movement all of my life. I really feel like our body is a temple, and we've got to listen to it and be one with it. We've got to move it or lose it. You know, if you keep moving your body, then it keeps it in flow. What do they say? A body in motion stays in motion, a body at rest stays at rest, right? And especially with what the situation so many of us have been put into in the past 3 years, where we're just a lot more stationary, it's important to remember how important movement is. And looking into things like Qigong is really about understanding how energy moves through the body, Tai Chi as well. It's all about energy and movement and understanding our relationship with energy and the energy that's all around us. And how to pull that energy all around us within, or pull the energy from the divine within. These are really powerful, powerful energy healing methods. I've been very interested in meditation for a long time, growing up as a singer and a dancer and an actor. It's kind of like a moving meditation. You're always just living moment to moment as an actor. When you're dancing, your body sort of takes over and you are in a neutral state. So I grew up with this sort of natural meditation and just continued it into a sitting practice as well. But something I like to say about that, I know so many people are caught up on quieting the mind. And of course, meditating does bring us to a quieter mind, just like sitting in nature can. But to me, it's more about connection and connection to our own stillness within. And I personally find that helps a lot. It helps us to get to know ourselves better just by being present and quiet and still. And then astrology is just, to me, understanding like the larger cycles of life and our place in the world. It helps us to know why we do the things we do in a better way. And so that in turn also helps us to know ourselves. So that's a little bit about what I do, but I'm assuming somebody would like a practical application of all this. And if not, I can try to think of one myself.
Well, when you said earlier, oh, you're picking up a rock, like what is that doing? So what do you say when someone, makes a comment like that?
A comment like, what does a rock do?
Yeah, like, oh, you're picking up a rock.
Yeah, well, I think it depends on the person and how they present the question to me. A lot of times they won't ask me about it. They'll just say it's not, none of it's valid. And I'm like, okay, to each their own, that's fine. But if somebody really wants to know, then I do start usually explaining it the way I just did, that crystals affect us on the constitutional level, that there is an energetic transference that happens when we work with crystals, which is why, for instance, if you make a crystal grid and it's, 6 feet away, is that still working with you and your body? And I would say, yes, essentially our energy fields are usually larger than that. But if you have it like on your bedside table, it's definitely working with you as you sleep, especially if you put intention towards it. So a lot of people that aren't open to any of this, it's not their path and it's not for them. But those who are just working with intention and consciously helps to magnify the effects, because we're noticing it, we're thinking about it, we're feeling into it. And when we do that, crystals have a very subtle vibrational frequency to them. And you sort of have to open to those very subtle vibrations in order to sense them. And that's a process for some people. It took me probably about a year till I realized I was already feeling them. A lot of people would sort of hold their hands over the crystals and be like, I'm not even looking. I'm just going to pick this one because it feels right. And I'd be like, I don't get that. But I started realizing that I pick up information through my eyes, and a lot of people do. We're in a very visual society, and we've learned to pick up information through the eyes. I learned by being in dance class every other day for years on end, if not every day, just sort of gauging and understanding through my eyes. And I was picking up the information. And so I thought it was just that I thought the rocks were pretty at first. And then I started realizing I was picking up rocks that weren't pretty at all. And I was like, why am I doing that? Why am I so called to this really ugly looking rock? And I started being able to feel and experience them in a new way as I started to understand I was picking up information through my eyes. We all have spiritual gifts, and usually we have one that's stronger than others. Some people have clear sight. Clairvoyance is clear sight, where they get images in their mind and they interpret those images. Some people actually will have clairaudient. They will have clear hearing, where they will hear something like it almost sounds like it's in your ear. And they'll get messages that way. And that is a wonderful way. I had something called direct knowing, which is just like downloads essentially. But until I was like 35, I didn't realize that those weren't just my thoughts. I thought I was brilliant, and I am. But I think I started realizing, oh, that didn't come from me. That was like channeled information. And I started being able to discern the difference between my own thoughts and information that was coming in from beyond, that were just like these truth bombs that were happening. And so getting to know your own intuitive gifts and really working with those then helps to open up others as well. But yeah, people pick up energy in so many different ways. And so it can be a process.
That's really interesting because, I always remember being told, let the stone talk to you. And sometimes, I just go in the aesthetics, like, oh my God, that's so pretty. Like every time I see an oral quartz, like I've got rose and aquas, because to me, they're just so wow. And anything that's, like celestite, things like that are so ethereal, but I've never thought of being able to get information from them.
Yeah. Crystals grow in the earth. They have the wisdom of the earth. In fact, they're the original record keepers in a sense. When the earth was formed, it was rocks and minerals and water coming together and forming the planet. And so they were here first, and they know the way. And if we can learn to be quiet enough, centered enough, grounded enough, we can start to feel their subtle energies and start to get messages from them. And this is one of the things I guide people on, like in every class that I do with crystals, is techniques to open to the subtle energies, to feel their frequencies through your body, and to start to receive messages from them. It's so funny. I had a customer here today who is a newer customer. I just adore him. And he's like, I can just like talk to them, right? I can ask them questions. And and I'm like, yes, you can. And I love that he came up with that on his own. He was like, this has got to be right. Because he started feeling the vibrations of them. I told him, I think a way to work with them initially. And he did that night. And he was like, wow, he's just really sensitive to energy and vibration and understandings. And he just started really working with them. So excited about it. I love it when people are so excited about crystals. And then today was like, I can talk to them, right? And I'm like, yes, you can. This is something I started to say before and didn't quite get to, but all of the ancients really knew how powerful they were, and they knew that they had spirit within them. They saw them as a part of the one, in a sense, depending on which lineage you're looking at, whether it's the alchemists in Western Europe or the Egyptians, those in India and China. They all had sort of a shamanic understanding of working with stones. This is something that's been happening since, humans first could bend over and pick up a rock. When I was a kid, I wasn't into crystals yet, but if I went to a location that I really appreciated and I wanted to bring something back from that location, I would pick up a rock and put it in my pocket. Don't all kids do that? Right? Kids have these massive rocks in their pockets because they feel the energy of it. And over time, and especially in Western society, as we grow up, we forget how to do that. We stop playing and having fun and just being present. That's what we do as kids. And who's to say, in some sense, that if we didn't just stay in that present, playful state throughout our life, if we were able to find that and maintain that things wouldn't just be in that flow, which is, I guess, in a sense, what I was doing when I was performing. I was just in a flow and everything just sort of came as it needed to, with some challenges for my life lessons and such. But, there was definitely a flow. And I've lost my place in all this, but essentially all ancients knew how magical these stones were and used them. Shamans would wear their medicine, right? They would have several necklaces on, bracelets, shells, all things from nature. And when someone wasn't well, they would take off their various bits of jewelry, which was just their way of carrying their tools around with them, right? And that's all they are. By the way, I don't know if there's anyone out there that needs to hear this, but these are tools. And it's from the divine. It's not God. This crystal won't save your life, but you interacting with the crystal, working with the crystal, letting go of misperceptions, release, coming into just greater communion with something of the natural world, something divine, whether it's, for some people, it's going to be scent. They're like, oh, I just need to smell this thing and I'll be fine. This is what saves your life. Not the crystal. So I have people say, which crystal helped me with this and which crystal helped me with that? And I'm like, well, it really depends on you. It really depends on what you're drawn to. You may say, oh, I have, a heartbreak, but the stones that speak to you are going to be different than the stones that speak to someone else under the same situation, because you need something different. Maybe you need more, maybe the heartbreak came because you weren't grounded. Maybe it came because you don't believe in yourself. Maybe it came because you just didn't have a certain creative impulse that other person wanted to jive with. So, there's different reasons for heartbreak. So we always have to look at our core issues, what's at the root of what's going on in our life. It's not that we can't use these stones for heartbreak. And by the way, my favorite stone for heartbreak is ruby and fuchsite. So those little red specks in this polished piece are ruby, and the green is fuchsite. There is ruby in zoisite as well. That's a darker green color. Fuchsite's usually this lighter green, but fuchsite is green mica, right? So this is just a polished piece. Whoops. A polished piece of green mica that happened to have rubies growing within it. And I love this because the fuchsite is very cleansing. It's what I call reflective and protective. And so it helps to shield us, while the shimmer that you get on a natural piece just cleanses and clears your whole energy field. It brings balance and luck and abundance. And the ruby is like grounding and linking the root and the heart chakra together, because usually when we have a heartache, it also affects our root chakra, because that's family and tribe, right? So that interaction with another being is a part of the root chakra. So the ruby works with the root and the heart chakra, and it like re-inspires and brings like that joie de vivre back. And here is a raw piece of the ruby in fuchsite, and I'm trying to see if maybe I have one with most of my ones with more fuchsite around them have gone. Here's one though. You can sort of see that fuchsite, that green mica around the little nodule of ruby inside. But a great heart healer. I had a breakup with someone who I thought was the one. And I was like, how am I ever going to get through this? And I wire wrapped a piece of ruby and fuchsite and wore it around my neck for a week. And by the end of the week, I was like, oh, I'm feeling pretty good. And I've given it to other people for the same thing. They've had good success with it. But that's because that's what they needed. It was they needed to cleanse, release, re-inspire, you know. But it really always depends on what's best for you. So there's a lot of people out there that are like, you need this and you need that when it comes to crystals. And to me, it's more intuitive than that. It's one of the gifts of working with crystals is that it really allows us to strengthen our own intuitive knowledge and wisdom, right? Strengthen that trust in our intuition. And this is really, really powerful. It's, to me, one of the best things about working with crystals. And so I see a lot of people come in and they'll ask me sometimes what stone works for this or that. And I'm like, I'll let you know what I know and what's worked for me or others. But before then, I want you to just look around. I've got thousands of crystals in here with hundreds of different varieties. And so I always ask them to see what calls to them, because that's what's going to be most powerful. And maybe it's going to affect something that you weren't even thinking was a part of what was going on until I talk to you about the properties of it, and or you read about it and work with the stone. Then you start to really understand, oh, that's why that stone really called to me.
Thank you. I wanted to ask because I've started to get I see I've got a lot more viewers now and they're really responding. Someone did a movement the law of attraction. They said yes, they agree because and I'm so glad you said that the crystals are just a tool, you know, that they're not the end all and be all, but they're a tool and they're a support. You mentioned a modality earlier about stone medicine. Could you elaborate on that?
The modality about stone medicine?
Yes, one that you experienced, and I know it was in your bio also, the stone medicine that you received training in, and I wanted to ask
Oh,
what that is.
classical Chinese stone medicine.
Yes.
Yeah, I actually studied with, I've studied many different techniques and understandings of working with the crystals, as well as energy healing and music, etc. But I studied laying on of stones with someone called the Rock Girl years ago. That's how I started my journey. And then I studied with Melody, which is also laying on of stones. She has the book Love is in the Earth. So I studied that method. I somewhat studied Katrina Raphael's method. And so both Melody and Katrina Raphael were people who were writing books in the 80s about using crystals for healing. So I studied with one of Katrina's previous teachers and crystal healers. And I studied classical Chinese stone medicine just because I thought there was going to be information there that I would like to have. And a lot of it ended up being confirmation of what I already knew, but just using a different modality. So I couldn't get everything from that class because it was really geared towards acupuncturists. And that's just a world that I don't fully know. I'm sort of better with Ayurveda. And by the way, if anyone out there knows someone who I can study stone medicine with, that's Ayurvedic, please let me know, because that's really what I would love to do. But yeah, so classical Chinese stone medicine just looks at how stones were used in healing more throughout antiquity in China. And it just has a slightly different slant to it. There's a lot of scientific understanding that goes behind that. They really go into the types of silicates that they are. So silicates is quartz. Quartz is a silicate. Jaspers, agates. Let's see. Here's a blue lace agate. Where's a jasper? All the jaspers are over there. Hold on. Oh, here's one. This is a red jasper. So these, along with flint and chert, these are microcrystalline quartz. This, along with amethyst and rose quartz, smoky quartz, tangerine quartz, red quartz, or hematite quartz. What am I forgetting? Citrine. These are all macrocrystalline quartz. So all that means is the crystals on the unit cell, or what I like to call on the cellular level, the crystals on the cellular level of this stone are a little bit bigger than the ones in these. These are tinier. So microcrystalline quartz and macrocrystalline quartz. But so many crystals that we work with, over 50% of the crystals that we work with are either silicates, what we would consider a silicate, which silicate is quartz, or have silicate within them. So even things like tourmaline. So here's pink tourmaline in moonstone. So even tourmaline, which has a lot of minerals in it, has some silicate in it. It's not considered a silicate. There's too many other things, but even that has silicate in it. So, you know, we also have silicate in our body. And so there's a natural understanding, like crystals really hold a structure, you know, they're really good at holding structure. We have a lot more water in our body. We're more fluid in the way we think and feel. Crystals are very strong and they hold the structure. So if you feel like, oh, I need more love in my life, then you pick up a rose quartz and you hold that. It's not that the crystal is shifting us as much as we are shifting to meet the vibration that the crystal holds steadily. And so, you know, rose quartz is known as a stone of self-love, self-healing, self-care. It's really great for allowing fear to fall away so subtly. We didn't even realize the fear was there perhaps, but it just starts falling away and we don't realize that it's going. And so if you need more of that in your love, more of that kind of love in your life, holding rose quartz, wearing rose quartz, sleeping with rose quartz, all excellent ways, taking a bath with it, meditating with it, all excellent ways to bring the structural vibration of this frequency into your own energy field and help you to essentially restructure your energy, restructure the way you think and feel about yourselves. It can help with that as well, to make the changes that you need. Any other questions?
Yeah, sorry.
I'm really good at answering questions, so I'm like, I did a lot of talking at the beginning, so I love to answer questions if anyone out there has a particular question. I'd even like to talk about things like, I'd be happy to talk about scent as well. I'm going to run over and grab an essential oil that I'm thinking about. Actually, a couple. So if you're drawn to scent, there's some wonderful oils that I recommend to almost everyone. It's funny, when I was first introduced to lavender, I didn't like the way it smelled. And I was like, I don't really want to use it. So I kind of looked into all the other oils that could work in similar ways to lavender, but I eventually came back home to lavender because it really does do a lot of really good stuff. We'll say it that way. Lavender is, it just sort of helps to calm and center. It is, all florals are really good for emotional healing, especially, right? Florals are meant to be good for the emotions. And it's really good for things though, like if you have trouble sleeping, it can be calming to the body so that you can fall asleep better. It's really wonderful for burns. It's the best thing for burns. I know people talk about butter and cold water and all that, but if you burn yourself, I'm going for the lavender because it takes the pain away. Sometimes it takes a few applications if it's a bad burn, but it takes the pain away and it helps to heal the wound quicker. And I had a second-degree burn on my arm once, and I just kept putting lavender on it every day for about 2 months, and I ended up with no scar or anything. Lavender is really great. It's sort of like a panacea. Another one I really love is bergamot. Bergamot is wonderful. It's sort of a mix between a floral and a citrus because it's the flower of the orange plant. And it's all citruses are very uplifting, but bergamot is also more balancing. It uplifts and it also brings energy down if your energy is too high or out of there. So to me, bergamot is a lovely scent and very balancing to the energy body. Another really great essential oil is lemon, and people think, oh, well, I can clean with it, which is great. You can clean with it. But lemon, like the bergamot, lemon is very uplifting, very, very cleansing. It's one of the most cleansing things that we can use: sage, lemon, salt. And it also has been studied in regards to focus. And I forget exactly what the percentage is, but people who study, like for a class or exam or something, people who study while lemon is diffusing have over a 50% better focus than those who are not. I want to say it's something like 75%, but I don't want to misquote there. So all of those are 3 really wonderful oils. And a great pairing for lavender is, of course, amethyst. Amethyst is one of my favorites. This is what we call mass formation amethyst. It's a chunk of, they just found a huge chunk of amethyst and they shaped it down. They chipped it off to get these rough edges on the side and then polished it to a point on top. But I love this. When you can't see through a crystal, I really feel it more in my physical body. It's a little more grounding and soothing. And amethyst is a natural sedative for the mind, sort of like lavender is. And so they're a great pairing to work with one or the other or both at the same time to sort of quiet the mind, bring spirit back into the body. And interestingly, quartz also helps with burns. All the quartzes, though I would say mainly clear quartz, amethyst, and rose quartz are good for, well, maybe not even rose as much, but especially amethyst and clear quartz really helpful for burns, just like lavender. Any questions or shall I carry on?
That was a beautiful piece of amethyst.
Oh, I know. Isn't it gorgeous? It's a chevron amethyst. So it's hard to see on this one because the little white lines are going through here, but they go down and up and they create a chevron shape. The white lines that you see in these chevron amethysts, here, let me get a better example. Here we go. When you see that white line in the chevron amethyst, that is calcite. So quartz is the most abundant mineral, essentially, that we can get to on Earth, right? And calcite is second. Maybe third, but it's second or third. It's right up there. And so when you're working with this, what I love about quartz is hard. Quartz is a hardness of 7.5. Some would say 8 on the hardness scale out of 1 to 10. So it's pretty hard. And hard crystals can be especially helpful when we're dealing with a long-term issue. And then the calcite is soft. It's a 3 on the Mohs scale of hardness out of 10. And calcite really helps things to move and flow, especially when there's been stagnation. And so when you've got the quartz and the calcite together, you're helping to move things out of the body, the mind, the emotions that need to go, while working on long-term issues at the same time. And these are especially good for connecting with the heavens and the divine frequencies, whether the point goes up to connect upwards or down to bring that energy down into your physical body. Either way is really good and works. By the way, a lot of this also, like I said, you strengthen the work by the intention that you create. And some people think intention, what does that do? Well, it's been scientifically proven to be really a huge factor. If you've read things like Schrodinger's cat or some of these other, that's not even new. I think that's from the 70s or 80s or 90s. I can't remember. But anyway, The Secret Life of Plants is another example, which a lot of people are familiar with that because Stevie Wonder did a whole thing with it. But The Secret Life of Plants also looks at that. If you're interested in water crystals, Masaru Emoto did a lot of research on that as well. How does an intention affect physical outcomes? And basically it does. You just have to be sure in it. And, always we need to make sure that we are doing things for the highest good. When we set an intention, it needs to be an intention that is for our own health, wellness, and healing, our own the things that we need for ourselves. We don't ever want to use this in a way where we're trying to exert our will on someone else. That will come back and bite you in the butt like times 10. So I really recommend against it. But also, we can't affect and control others. We can only affect and control ourselves. And so all of these intentions need to come from that place. But when you work with intention in this way for healing and wellness, for empowerment and manifestation of your own personal life and your goals, then it's really powerful medicine. But yeah, a really beautiful piece because it's so dark purple, and I really go for the dark purple. However, lavender quartz can be really magical as well. It's sort of got like a higher or finer vibration or quicker vibration, partly because there's just less of the trace mineral within, which, by the way, the trace mineral that gives the color to amethyst, iron. But it's a trace amount. So it's not affecting us in quite the same way as like a pyrite, because pyrite is mostly iron. And so the trace minerals within a stone that give it color, these are really especially good for the emotional and mental aspects of working with crystals. Whereas the main component of the crystal is more about the physical body.
I think Melvin had a question. Melvin?
Yes, hi. Good evening, ladies. How you doing? Good stuff.
Good, thank you.
Good stuff. My question is, with the work that you have been doing and the knowledge that you have, with the shift in the energy field in which we're going through right now, what forecast do you see for the future?
That's a big question. I mean, that's more philosophical and spiritual, I suppose, in a sense. We are definitely going through huge shifts and changes astrologically. For instance, Pluto has been last year we had Pluto conjunct the United States chart of Pluto. It was its first return, we call it. And so Pluto reveals decay, and it was doing it in Capricorn, which is all about the structures of life. So it's revealing all the dirty, ugly stuff under the surface that's sort of been hidden, especially around power. And it's revealing it so we can be like, hey, what's this? This is not okay. We need to change these things, right? So it's definitely something that's meant to happen, right? When we're looking at the cycles of life. I mean, if you've watched Ancient Apocalypse, for example, he's talking about ages, right? That the huge cycles. So it's hard to say specifically what is to come, except that what I know is we always spiral upwards. It may not look like we're going upwards, so to speak. And when I say upwards, I mean towards more of the divine frequencies. It may not look like that when it's happening, when we're spiraling out, but it's all eventually coming to more alignment with God's source creation, is how I see it. And so it's always going to be for the betterment. Does that mean that I'm going to survive it till we get there? Not necessarily. But I do see that it's all for the good. I mean, if you want to talk about huge earth changes possible, it's certainly possible. I personally believe that we are being supported not only astrologically, but by energy beings at this time to help us get through these shifts and changes with as little upset and upheaval as possible, but there's going to obviously be upset and upheaval through the process. But back to the point of the spiral, it's oh, right, I remember. When we look at sort of the large age, right? So what we essentially go in an age, we go all the way around the chart, and it takes about 12,000, a little over 12,000 years to do that, to go through each of the ages, because each age, so when I'm talking about an age, sorry, that was the great year that I was describing. An age is like the Piscean age, and now we're moving into the Aquarian age. These are about 2,400 years, and to go around all 12, which is the great year, is more like 12,000. Wait, that can't be right. Anyway, what I know about that, because I don't know all the science behind all that, what I know is that we were at the galactic center. The galactic center exists within Sagittarius, and over time we fell away from that, and we went down the furthest away from the galactic center. And now we're coming back up, and we're right at that point where we're crossing over into the last quarter. So there's going to be a lot of upheaval, most likely, as we shift ages from Piscean to Aquarian, which we're obviously in that window. And many feel we've already crossed into the Aquarian. Seems like it, but we're on that upswing back towards the galactic center. So I really feel like we're coming into a beautiful, divine, connected time. But I feel that perfect alignment, that's about 7,500 years away. So I'm not sure if this answers your question at all.
Yeah.
Did you have more
No,
specifics?
I'm in agreement with you. I'm in agreement. Well, my is an energy field. You know, we talk about the vortex energy within the body, and the aura is a spiral form of energy, which is based upon the cells within the system. I like all that stuff as well. It's very interesting. I was just curious to hear what your response was in terms of what's happening today, and it's a cosmic shift, basically completing a timeline. You know, so
Yeah.
this is although it does not seem like it. But we're actually looking at the fall of those who are ruling right now, and them themselves, they understand that that's why they're committing so much havoc and trying to expel as many as they can, or take as many with them as they can with their vampire, what do you call it, the vampire energy. So
Yeah.
that was it though.
Yeah. Okay, good. I just wondered if there was more specifics, but yes, it's a big time. And I find personally that if I just stay in the flow as much as I can of my own life, that stuff doesn't affect me so much. I mean, I keep up with it, so I know what's going on, but in case I need to know something in regards to moving through life, but I try to let it affect me and as little as possible. Because I'm working to create the life I want and the world that I want to live in, which is empowering each individual and helping us to really connect with our spiritual gifts and the magical beings that we are. I like to think of us as how did Marianne Williamson say it? Oh, sorry. She says a shift in perspective is the miracle. So I guess that wasn't the one I was thinking of. But oh, no, this is what she says. She says, you are a child of God. And by that, she means you are a child of God's source creator, the universal energy frequency, right? We are a child of that energy, that spirit. We've got a bit of that spirit within us. I personally feel that the spark of creation, that divine spark that happens when the first cells split as we are starting to form in the womb, that's the spark of creation that allows the growth to happen and create the beings that we are. And what's interesting from that is that spark exists in the lower Dantian. Is that correct? Yes, that spark exists in the lower Dantian. So right above the sacral, you know, the belly, in the belly, it's that top part of the belly, right under the belly button. That's where that first spark happens, and those cells split and create the embryo, and then the spine starts to grow. And the first thing that grows, the first organ that grows is the heart. And from the heart, then the arms and the fingers and the head and the brain all sort of come from this central heart space. So to me, the heart is the brain of the body. And then we have the other brains, which are the mind and the gut. And to me, though, these are the sub brains to the main brain, which is the heart. The heart holds frequency and consciousness within it. And then we have examples of that in the gut and in the mind. And that's so much part also of health and wellness and having those understandings.
So the
That was
heart,
good. That was
Blah,
good.
blah, blah.
yeah, no, this is all.
No, no. Yeah, it wasn't, it actually wasn't blah, blah, blah. It was actually deep creative science. And I wanted to interrupt you to tell you to go back and re-mention the whole spark situation, because I know that a lot of people don't understand that that is the true origin of your existence from the physical plane in which we're living on. You know, I mean, just from here, we're not talking about where you came from before you came into the physical body, but the spark essentially is when your journey actually begins. You start forming to experience this dimensional time in which you are in. And the origin of the spark is another story, you know, but
Yeah.
no, that's fascinating stuff. That's
Yeah, if
very
you've ever listened to
stuff.
Nassim Harriman, I don't know if you have, but I listened to him avidly years ago, like 10 years ago, when he was doing Crossing the Event Horizon talks. And he would always say, you know, he's a unified field theorist in physics. And so he'd go into these classes at Yale or other places, and there'd be a picture. Oh, I don't have anything to draw on, but there'd be a picture of a balloon with pennies on it. And the balloon would expand and the pennies would move out. And that's how they were explaining the expansion of the universe. And he said, I have a question. Who's this guy blowing up the balloon? Who's that? What is creating that expansion? Where is that coming from?
Exactly.
And of course they were like, no. Don't bring God into this. But God can be anything in a sense that you believe is that original divine spark, right? God, source, creation, the universe, aliens, whatever you think is that created that divine spark. That is within us. I really feel like that is in the core of our center. And that's what I like to focus on when I meditate sometimes, is that divine spark, that essence, that we've got a drop of the divinity right within us, and that we are all divine beings, animals and everyone included. We're all divine expressions. We're all expressions of the divine frequency, the divine spark, whatever that may be.
Who was that author?
Thank you.
What was the book? Who was that author?
I was talking about Nassim Harriman, Nassim. Harriman is Haramein. And he had a series of talks, which were about, I think, 8 to 10 hours long, called Beyond the Event Horizon. And this was, you know, cutting edge scientific talk. At the time I was listening to it, I said 10 years ago is probably longer than that. I'm not so good with the time in years, but let's see, maybe more like 15 years ago now. But he's been on a lot of different documentaries and other, like, he pops up all over the place. And he's just really interesting because he essentially ties spirit to science, and that's what I've always done all my life, and I think so many of us do, that they go hand in hand, and it's only the people that want to divorce spirit and science. I used to say, like, if you study the arts or the sciences, you eventually get to the same place, right? And it's the same sort of idea.
I'm Googling him now.
Yeah, I think he has something called the Resonance Project.
Yes, the Resonance Science Foundation and
Yeah.
Taurus Tech.
I think he's actually started teaching classes, maybe. I don't know. I haven't kept up as much lately, but he's fascinating and has a lot of good information that is more modern.
Okay, I'm
And
following
connecting
him
to
now.
quantum physics and all of that stuff as well.
Okay, I just followed him. Okay. So, okay, we're getting close to the 9 o'clock hour. Do you want to reintroduce yourself and say where people can find you?
Yeah, I'm Laurelle Rethke of 5 Sense Healing, which is my healing practice, and the Faerie Den, which is my shop and the classes. I didn't say this at the beginning, actually. I offer healing therapies in crystals, sound healing, and energy work, also essential oil therapies. And I offer consultations in regards to astrology, and I teach about that as well. And rock readings. I will do a rock reading for you, sort of similar to what someone does with tarot cards, but I use the rocks. And I teach classes. I mentioned that I do teach beginning classes. In fact, I have a class coming up for anybody who's on Long Island. I'm doing a crystal grid class at the Port Jeff Salt Cave, which is in Port Jefferson, on Saturday, February 11th. From 4 to 6 p.m. We're doing a 2-hour crystal grid class there, and we're just going to start by putting a grid around us and seeing what that feels like. And we're going to cover the principles of working with crystal grids and how that's different from a single crystal. And we're going to just practice other grids and create a grid together at the end. So I teach crystal classes, both more beginning, and I teach certification courses. I've certified over 100 people in the past 5.5 years to be crystal healing therapists, and they're all over the world, from Turkey to California. At this point, that's as far as the world goes at this point for me on that. I travel to speak and teach as well, and then I have the shop, and also classes on astrology, essential oils, though I usually do the essential oils at this point more one-on-one with people. But astrology and energy healing as well. And I was downloaded with an energy healing practice that I call Star Drop, which I find really helpful these days for people. It helps to really cleanse and realign to your original blueprint, and it really helps to lighten your load. Most people are like, I just feel infused with light, and things don't seem as heavy as they did before. And a stone for that as well is jet. As all things lead from one to another, jet is actually driftwood that was compressed in mud and petrified over time, and it looks like it'd be heavy, but it's really light. And this is a great stone to help you lighten your load and remove unhealthy chi from the body, as well as what I was mentioning before. What was I mentioning before? A little off track today.
We were discussing Star Drop.
Oh, right. Star Drop. So Star Drop is really great for helping to lighten your load as well. Thank you for keeping me on track there. But if you want to reach out to me, I am at the Faerie Den. And I spell that differently than most Americans. I spell it, I guess what we call the British or Irish way of spelling it, which is Faerie. So I'm at the Faerie Den on Instagram, on Twitter, though I'm not on there much, but mainly Instagram and Facebook. And my main website is thefaerieden.com. And thefaerieden.com leads you to my healing website, which is 5censhealing.com. 5 cents. I mean, I kind of got the idea from Lucy, but I changed it to 5 cents, SENSE, 5 cents healing. And it's the number 5 cents healing.com. And that's where you'll find my consultations and healing therapies. But if all else fails, I'm sure there'll be a link somewhere that Abina will put up, and you can just contact me that way.
Oh, yes, I tagged you.
Oh, thank you.
What, besides Long Island, is there any upcoming events closer in the city?
Yeah, I actually had intended to do a crystal healing certification course in January, but you know, the best laid plans. So I will be doing one of those in the city coming up, most likely in the next couple of months. I'll probably schedule something next week sometime. So you can go to my website to find that out next week, or reach out to me and let me know that you're interested, and I can make a class happen for those that are interested. I've got a few people waiting on me right now to do one. Those are usually done when I do them in the city. They're done in person in the Faerie Den with all of these crystals around, so that you can really work with the stones, feel their energies, get to know them, embody it a bit. Everything I do when I teach, I try to make it as experiential as possible, so that you can experience it. Because, you know, a lot of times we'll hear things and we'll try to do that, but once you experience it and know it for yourself, that's what really changes you, and that's what affects you and what stays with you. And so I always try to make my classes experiential in that way. And I'm probably doing a follow-up astrology class for a group of ladies, but you know, if there's any class that you're interested in the things that I've spoken about, just reach out to me, let me know you're interested, and I'll put you on the list and let you know when something's coming up.
And just to share with people, I bought my first ever piece of meteorite from the Faerie Den. And this was a few years ago. And I just remember, like, oh my gosh, it's like a wall of stones here. This is wonderful.
Yeah, it's kind of like a mini crystal healing to come into this area, and you're just surrounded by crystals all around you. And you could just stand here and breathe for a few minutes and essentially get a crystal healing. But I'm just showing folks a meteorite. You got one of these Campos, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I love meteorites because meteorites fell from the stars. And so they've got all that wisdom, esoteric understanding from the star realms. It's come directly here from there, but it's very grounding. So it's like the energy goes, shoo, right? Really, really grounds you so well, grounds and expands in a huge way. And so they can be very powerful to work with.
About celestite. Celestite and the aura quartz. What do you have to say about those two?
Yeah. So celestite is one of the few minerals that has strontium in it. And strontium is really good for the bones. So interestingly, celestite is good for the bones, but that relates back to what I was talking about in regards to the bones and consciousness. And celestite's really also known as celestine, by the way, but celestine or celestite, it's really known for connecting to the angelic realms and celestial realms. And it's interesting that it works with the bones, because that's a direct connection to spirit, to Shen in the bones, and that communion with the divine frequencies. So that's what I would say about,
That's so ironic because it's so delicate, though.
It's so delicate, and yet it's so heavy. So it's like really grounding it into your body in a sense. And I mean, it's also good for communication, helping us to communicate from the divine as well, you know, open up a channeling like that. And then what was the other stone?
Or aura quartzes.
Oh, aura quartzes. Okay. So just so people can see them. Here's one. Here's what we call an aqua emerald or aqua aura quartz. And this is what we call angel aura quartz. So it's funny, when I first saw these aura quartzes, the angel auras, I was so drawn to them. I was like, oh my God, what is that? What is that? And then I found out that it's bonded, right? The crystal grew in the earth, but humans bonded a metal onto it. And in the case of angel aura, they bonded platinum and silver. And in the case of aqua auras, they bonded gold and silver. And so I was like, bummer. It's not natural. And I sort of walked away from it, but I kept getting drawn to them. And I was like, why am I so drawn to it? And so I looked into it a bit more. And this is how you learn with crystals anyway, right? And I realized the crystal grew in the earth. It's got the earth wisdom right within it. It will connect with you in that way. And also the metals that they bonded on, also from the earth. And it's just that humans put the metals on top of the crystal. And so it's kind of like working with that metal. Like if I took a clear piece of quartz and I wire wrapped it with the metals, then it would be working with it in that way. And I realized that there's something very magical about these. I met the people who created the aqua aura quartzes in the first place. I met them when I was at a show in Denver. And I don't remember the story exactly, but I just walked away from that experience going, oh my God, the fairies made them do it. Because it was like this whimsical, haphazard sort of, oh my gosh, sort of like realization. And it kind of came together in this really unique way that nobody planned. It just was like divinely guided to me. So I was like, the fairies made them do it. And so then I was really connected with it and working with it. And I personally just really love the angel aura quartzes because I can more easily work with gold and silver just by wire wrapping a stone, right? But platinum, not so much. And platinum connects us to cosmic consciousness. And it helps us with the silver, it helps us to really embody that internally. And so these angel aura quartzes to me are so magical because it's one of the few ways that I can work with platinum in a stone, because I think there's no common stones that have platinum within them in trace amounts or large amounts. And so this is my opportunity to do that in a way that is really meaningful. And I mean, the first batch of these that I bought for the shop, I didn't sell a one. I just put them all around me. I was like, I love them. I can't let go of them, which is sometimes a problem with crystals. But eventually, once you've imbued and really experienced and embodied that energy frequency, then you're able to let go of them a little bit. I have a whole set of vanadinites that went out a couple of years ago because I was finally able to let them move on after I'd fully embodied that energy. But and now I only need one. But sometimes that happens with me where I get a batch of them. I'm like, I can't let them go. And that was definitely the case with the vanadinite and with the angel aura quartz. It's truly magical. And they help us. Oh, they've got that aura energy to them, right? It brings our attention to the aura or the energy field. And in the case where they've got this little rainbow, iridescent rainbow, that really connects us to the aura and the energy field, as well as the energy running right through our body. So they can be centering and opening and expanding, letting us just become aware of this energy field around us and how that energy field interacts with everything around it.
And they are so pretty.
Yes. Indeed. I love those stones.
Yeah, I purchased one at a store up in Port Jervis, and I took a picture of it and posted. I said, this picture does not even do this justice. It's just so beautiful.
That's true a lot, though, isn't it? That, you know, sometimes people will send me a picture of a crystal and be like, what's this? And I'm like, I have no idea, because it just doesn't translate the same way. You have to see it in person sometimes. I mean, sometimes you know, but but there's times where it's difficult to identify in a photo.
Well, I want to thank you very much for spending time with us. I really appreciate everything that you shared this evening. This was just fantastic. Can you just repeat your social media information again?
Sure. Yeah. I just want to start by thanking you for bringing me on today and for getting the opportunity to speak to your community and everybody who showed up today. My name is Laurelle Rethke. I'm at the Faerie Den on Instagram, Facebook, and thefaerieden.com. And that's the easiest way to get to me. And Faerie is spelled Faerie, Den is Den. And I'm in the Fairies Den. Thank you so much, and blessings to you and everyone present.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And for everyone watching, this was Transformation Thursday. Thank you very, very much for being here, and we will see you next week. But remember, we are all a spark of the divine. That's something I usually say anyway.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Okay, everyone, have a wonderful evening. Okay, thank you.